Have you ever watched someone who just seems to radiate confidence? It's like they come into the room and they just own it. They are confident, comfortable, they take risk, they don't seem to second guess themselves at all. And meanwhile, you're literally asking yourself, how do they do that? How did they even get to the place where they can just effortlessly come in while you're literally left feeling like you question every single thing you do and say? Hi, I'm Jessica Davis. I'm a licensed therapist and mindset coach. I have over a decade's worth of experience working with children, teens, and young adults, but primarily my focus is teens and young adults who are struggling with anxiety, self-doubt, and overthinking. And yet, with all that experience, I still struggle with self-doubt and overthinking myself. In fact, to be honest, being on YouTube, doing this first video is not easy for me. In fact, I understand why people quit YouTube because it is a difficult journey. I also realize that I'm not going to get confidence in this without putting myself out there. But I know that confidence isn't built overnight. It is built by taking action, by taking small steps each and every day to get to where you want to go. So this year, I really wanted to do something completely outside of my comfort zone. I started a podcast focusing in on teens and young adults struggling with anxiety. I went natural with my hair. Haven't done that since childhood. And by childhood, I mean like 6, 7, 8. So this is a new journey for me. And I'm here on YouTube putting myself out there with all this fear of, will my message resonate? Will I be able to take potentially negative feedback or criticism? All the things that most people doubt and feel uncomfortable about, right? Like how I look, what will people think? And yet, I also thought, I really have a message that I want to get out there. I feel like teens and young adults struggle with so many things and no one is speaking directly to them. And so I wanted to create that here, a space where we could connect, where I could share, and hopefully where I can inspire and motivate you to take action. I want to preface this. I do not have confidence all figured out. I'm a work in progress, just like you. I am working on it day in and day out. And so I don't want you to feel like, oh, she's an expert in anxiety or she's an expert in confidence. No, I am definitely not that. I am just on the journey like you're on the journey. And I hope that this episode resonates with you. So basically what I'm saying is I'm choosing to be louder than my excuses. And I truly hope that you find something valuable out of this episode. If you do, please comment below, like, subscribe, do all the things. I actually hate that phrase, all the things. Like, subscribe, follow, whatever, do all the things. That's probably going to be the last time you ever hear me say that phrase. Seriously. So someone important to me, I'm not going to say specifically who because this is YouTube and I don't know who's going to see it, maybe 5 people. But the point is, I want to protect that person just in case. But we went to a event, and at the event, a person came up to them and they asked them, oh, what do you do? And the response of the person was, oh, so I just do fill in the blank. And I remember thinking like, why did they just answer like that? I was like, this is so weird. And I didn't say that out loud, but later when we got in the car, I would literally ask them like, why did you say it like that? And they're like what? Kind of defensive, which is understandable. And then I said, like, you weren't proud of what you do. See, because sometimes we don't realize it, but how we communicate things says more about how we feel about ourselves. I don't think they got it at that time, but how we talk about ourselves shows how we feel about ourselves as well. When you shrink in conversation or dismiss what you're good at, you don't realize it, but it starts to change how you see you. And then eventually it changes how people see you as well. If we downplay who we are, if we act like we don't matter, people will believe us. Let me say that again. If we downplay who we are, if we act like we don't matter, people will believe us. And I've seen it over and over again in counseling. People will say the saddest things about themselves, the meanest things about themselves. And I'm not going to repeat all of it because it's just not helpful. And I'm sure you've already said the mean things to yourself. So you don't really need me repeating different things that you've said. But in a sense, right, you're putting yourself down all the time, over and over again, day in, day out. But when these things happen and clients are saying these things, I really try to communicate how important it is to not put ourselves down. One, it's not helpful, right? It doesn't make us change anything. It doesn't motivate us. It doesn't, inspire us to do more. In fact, it does the complete reverse or the complete opposite. It makes us not want to do things. It leads us to isolate ourselves. It makes us want to just really hide and stay inward and not be open to new things. Two, it's damaging to our confidence. I'm sure you're thinking, well, yeah, duh, that's obvious. I'm already there. But really, it does define not only how we see ourselves, but it defines eventually how we feel about ourselves as well. And I think a lot of times, especially teens, they think that if they talk poorly about themselves, it doesn't matter. It has no impact. But it really does. They just don't know it yet or they don't see it, right? Because they feel like I already have this low self esteem that it won't matter. Perfect example, one that I think is like super interesting, but plants. Most kids do this type of experiment at school, some don't. But the idea is that you have two plants. One you provide negative or no communication towards, the other one you provide positive communication towards it. And you see that that plant grows, right? And the other one does not grow at the same rate. It actually usually doesn't do well. And well, it's maybe not, I don't know. But the point is, the other plant that's getting that positive feedback or getting that positive encouragement grows, it flourishes. That's what you need to do to yourself. Putting yourself down doesn't even give you a chance to do that. And it does impact how you view the world, how you view yourself, and ultimately, number three, how others start to view you too, right? Because if someone's constantly putting themselves down, at some point you will believe what they're saying, right? If you start to say, I don't matter, or what I think doesn't matter, or I'm useless, or I can't get anything right, at some point the shift happens where people start to think, I can't help this person. And we inherently want to help. We inherently, instinctively want to help people. It's part of our nature. So imagine if you're trying to help someone and they constantly are putting themselves down, you eventually feel like, I'm not helping. And so we will want to go to a different place. We'll want to find people who we can feel like we're making an impact on. So if that's you where you're putting yourself down, just know that eventually it impacts all these different areas. And I'm sure you're like, duh, I'm aware of this. And yes, right, you are. But sometimes I think we're just not aware of how much it impacts the other people around us as well as impacting ourselves. So this is funny. There's a quote circulating online, and they say it's from Bruce Lee. I honestly have no clue if it's from Bruce Lee or not. I highly doubt it is, but I love the quote, so I'm going to read it. And it says, don't speak negatively about yourself, even as a joke. Your body doesn't know the difference. Words are energy and they cast spells. That's why it's called spelling. Change the way you speak about yourself, and you can change your life. Okay. I have to laugh because the whole casting spells thing to me was very funny. But if I read it without that part, I think it's so well. And I just wish I could have just taken that out. Like, yeah, they should have just removed that part of the quote. But let me read it again so you can actually get the message. Don't speak negatively about yourself, even as a joke. Your body doesn't know the difference. Words are energy. Change the way you speak about yourself, and you can change your life. And that is so powerful and so true, right? Think about it. When we're around something or someone where it feels like they are full of positive energy, we feed off that energy. We leave that friend and we're like, oh my gosh, I just feel like I can do anything. I am excited to take on a new project, or I want to be more focused and motivated because you fed off of that person's energy. The way that they were communicating and talking inspired you. The same way when we're around someone with negative energy, that impacts us as well, right? I don't know if you, but we have friends where if they're constantly negative all the time, it becomes draining. It drains us in a way where we're like, I didn't know that I was feeling like I'm on E, but now I definitely feel like I'm on empty. You start to change how you act because that person is so negative and it impacts you. So you start being more negative, and it just leads to this like negative spiral. But the main point is, why do we think talking down to ourselves every single day wouldn't impact how we feel? It does. It absolutely does. And I know what I'm asking you is not easy. It's not easy to go from tearing yourself down to lifting yourself up, right? That doesn't happen overnight. But in all honesty, becoming and talking negatively and having low self esteem doesn't happen overnight either. It is happens by the same action over and over and over and over again until we don't recognize that this is just who we feel like we become. So, what I'm challenging you is to do something that's going to feel unnatural. It's going to feel uncomfortable. It's not going to be easy by any means. But if you shift how you speak about yourself, you can shift how you show up in the world. And to think of that, like that, wow, by just speaking to myself differently might mean the difference of having new friendships, building a relationship, starting a relationship, traveling, getting a job, changing jobs. All those things can shift by just changing how I speak to myself. And I know you'll probably think, no, Jessica, you're nuts. You're crazy. That's not going to happen by just me talking to myself differently. But it will. When you talk to yourself negatively, you basically quit the race. You've lost the race before you even started it. If someone goes to the start line and they're wanting to get into a race, and before the gun even goes off, they're telling themselves, I'm not going to be able to do this. I suck at running. I'm never going to win. You don't even have the ability, the mindset to tell yourself that you can. And so ultimately, you've already lost the race before you've even begun. And the same thing I think happens in life. Before you even apply to the job, you're telling yourself you're not going to get it. Before you even decide or go out on a date, you're saying, I'm never going to have a relationship or I'm never going to be able to date. How can you then show up, right? But when you start off by actually trying to do something simple and change the language and change how you speak to yourself, doors will open. That's why I love E and the courage method. And for those of you who don't understand the courage method, you'll find out as my journey goes along in explaining the courage method. But E is by far my favorite one. It's not about forcing things. E is for embracing the wins. Because when you shift your focus on everything that's wrong to recognizing things that are going right, something changes. You start to feel better. You start to engage in the world differently. And slowly, but surely, you start building confidence. And the best part of this is it doesn't matter how small the win is, it still counts. When was the last time you acknowledged something that you did, even something small? Because I hear this all the time. Someone pushes themselves to do something, but the second they did it, they tell themselves it wasn't a big deal. Well, I should have already been doing that. Or that's not something to be proud of. Or other people don't struggle with this. Why should I celebrate it? But why not? Honestly, if something was hard for you and you did it, why doesn't it count? Who decides that only big accomplishments are worth celebrating? Or who decides that only big wins matter? Confidence isn't built on massive achievement. It's built in the quiet moments where you prove that you can do hard things. I once worked with a client who honestly was at a really low, and they didn't believe that life was worth living. They thought that their family, their friends, they honestly didn't feel like they had any friends, but they felt like them being here on earth wasn't helping. They felt like counseling was pointless. They had tried counseling before, didn't feel like it was helpful. They had convinced themselves that nothing would work. But I don't give up, and I really do love a challenge. And so we focused on the wins. The fact that they came to counseling was a win. They didn't even want to be there, but they showed up. That's a win. The next thing, going to school when they didn't feel like they could be seen or didn't want to be seen. That's a win. They would go out to a restaurant or drive through and eventually be able to order food. That's a win. They were able to connect in the counseling session and laugh. That's a win. We just started to focus in on those small moments, those small wins. And eventually, once you start to feel like, okay, I'm getting momentum, I'm starting to feel this shift, and you feel it. You feel that shift happening. And it's amazing to see. It's amazing to experience. And eventually they found something that they hadn't had in a long time: hope. And that's a powerful thing. Hope is crucial in life. And it happened not because of something they did overnight. It happened because they started seeing that their actions mattered. They started to see that they could change things and they didn't have to sit in the anxiety and the doubt and the depression. They could make active change by just doing little by little by little. I hear teens and young adults say all the time, but like, if I start to celebrate myself, doesn't that mean that I'm cocky or arrogant or full of myself? I get it. We live in a world of people constantly judging us. So it totally makes sense that, the thought of actually recognizing or embracing our wins or recognizing our strengths would seem as if we're cocky or arrogant. But I will say this: I would love to see anyone prove me wrong on this one. People with anxiety are not cocky and arrogant by any stretch of the imagination. In fact, they criticize themselves so much that it wouldn't even allow cockiness and arrogance to come about. So, no, you're not cocky, you're not arrogant, you're none of those things. So, when you take a second to say, hey, I did something hard, that's not arrogance. That's building yourself up instead of tearing yourself down. And that is a major difference. That is acknowledging the win, that is communicating what occurred instead of beating yourself up and telling yourself you didn't do enough. And honestly, with all the pressure and judgment we face every day, this skill is more important than ever, because the truth is, no one can embrace the wins for you. You have to do it for yourself. So if you've been brushing off your progress, this is your reminder. You're doing more than you think. You're growing. You're trying. And that matters. So in the comments, I would love to hear from you. What's one small win you had this week? It doesn't matter how small the win was. I want to hear it, because to me, it counts. And if this video helped you feel seen, heard, that you got any value at all, please hit the like button, subscribe to the channel, and share this with someone who you feel like needs to hear this message. Also, grab the Anxiety Survival Toolkit in the description. It is a free resource that is meant to help you when anxiety takes hold so that you can fight back and not feel alone.